All right, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Star Wars Marco Balance. My name is Mark. It has been a minute since I've talked to you guys. Happy to be back. Hope you guys are all doing well, and excited to be talking Star Wars again. Today we are talking about the 3-episode premiere of Bad Batch Season 3, the final season of the animated Star Wars series. And coming off a really solid second season of the Bad Batch with some notable character deaths, some episodes that I think rival some of the political intrigue episodes in Clone Wars, really diving into Crosshair's psyche and what happens to clones or soldiers after the democracy that they once served turns into an empire. All of these great ideas were explored in some really fantastic episodes. And so my expectations were really high coming into this season. I was hoping for a really focused story, where we leave off at the end. It's very dark. We have a character death. We have Crosshair and Omega both trapped and imprisoned on Mount Tantis. Hunter and Wrecker are kind of by themselves now. Echo has left the crew. There's just a lot of really great stuff to dig into here on an emotional level and on a Star Wars lore level, because Mount Tantis is this research facility that we know, based on hints we've seen in the previous season, based on what we're seeing in Mandalorian, and of course the payoff in Rise of Skywalker. This facility is the epicenter of Project Necromancer and how the Empire was able to create this contingency plan to clone or bring Palpatine's, spirit or his life force back to life through a clone. Do I think that was the original plan or roadmap for the series? No, I think they kind of had to create a way to explain Palpatine in Rise of Skywalker, and I think Mandalorian and now Bad Batch are doing a lot of the heavy lifting on how we got there in the end. Some people might make the claim that, Bad Batch and Mando will make the sequels better. They'll explain them just like Clone Wars did for the prequels. And to them, I'll always say the Clone Wars did not save the prequels. The prequels were still a very singular vision from George Lucas. The themes were consistent. The characters were consistent. The sequels, on the other hand, are kind of all over the place. We know from actors and directors that there wasn't exactly a plan throughout the sequels, so they were kind of just making it up as they went, and you can feel that when you watch the trilogy. It's very disjointed. So no, I don't think by the end of this season of The Bad Batch that the sequels and the Rise of Skywalker will automatically become this amazing or a better version of what they were before. But I do think it has made the idea of Palpatine coming back a lot more interesting. Even though I wish he didn't come back, I do think that the concept of him having a contingency plan for his death makes a lot of sense, because he is this mastermind who orchestrated the Clone Wars and this galactic war. And to think that he wouldn't take every necessary precaution to keep his life alive as much as possible or bring himself back, I think would be short-sighted to say. So, a very long intro there. I think there's a lot of stuff to get into in these first 3 episodes. If you're new to the channel or it's been a minute since you've listened to one of my thoughts episodes, this will be a recap episode. It'll be a review of the 3 episodes we got, but it'll also have some analysis and some critiques in here as well. So it's not just a review. There's also some theory crafting, analysis, stuff like that. So excited for you guys to be here, excited to jump into it. And overall, I really enjoyed these first 3 episodes. I think the tone was definitely what I was hoping for. Very mature, very focused. I don't think the Bad Batch has entirely shed its DNA of having some of these Monster of the Week episodes that I think could be supplemented for more character-focused episodes, especially episode 2 here with Hunter and Wrecker. Again, emphasizing that when the show isn't focused on, or when the show is focused on Hunter and Wrecker, it does have a bit of a quality drop, and I think the strongest part of this show is when we are talking about Omega, Crosshair, the Empire at this moment, converting from a republic to this tyrannical government. But I will give props to episode 2 for still being focused, even though it does devolve into a Monster of the Week. I do think it brings in some interesting ideas. It is still focused on getting to Omega and Crosshair, and it doesn't feel like a one-off adventure kind of. It does feel like it contributes to the story in a broader sense than maybe what it would have done in seasons 1 or 2. So I did appreciate that. Having said that, of course, episodes 1 and 3 are the strong ones. Episode 1 in particular, I absolutely loved the focus on Omega's everyday life in the facility and running into Crosshair once in a while. We see the passage of time. I think the music here, Kevin Kiner, I think Bad Batch is probably his best score in the sense of creating an atmosphere across all of the shows that he scored for Star Wars. I think the Bad Batch score is so perfect for the time period here. We have the heavy synths, we have the deep bass. It complements this very tumultuous time in the galaxy so well, and I think in this episode 1, it really does a lot of the storytelling, because I wouldn't say there's a lot of dialogue in episode 1, but there's a lot of great cuts. We have these very atmospheric moments of Omega and Crosshair just going about their day, the scientists going about their day. So I think the music does a lot of heavy lifting in episode 1, which I really, really loved. And episode 3, we get Omega and Crosshair escaping, which I didn't think would happen this soon, and I think I'll talk about that a bit more in my critique section when I dive into episode 3 a bit more. But I really did enjoy the interaction here in episode 3 between Omega and Crosshair. We get the Emperor. The Bad Batch has always done a fantastic job of using the Emperor just enough and making the weight of his presence be felt by everyone in the episode. That was great to see, and we get some more peeks into Project Necromancer. We see that Omega's blood is very important, and by the end, it is the key to unlocking Project Necromancer to its highest degree. And the final thing I'll say before I dive into these episodes a bit more in depth, no surprise, the animation here is top class. It is some of the best animation we have on TV, bar none, around the world. The dust and particle effects, the wide landscapes, the integration of painted backgrounds with animation, all of it is really fantastic, and I'm excited to see how far they go with the animation in this season and maybe new techniques that they use. I do think that they brought in some new techniques with the monster in episode 2, with some of the wetness effects on this monster and some of the lighting there. I think that was something that they hadn't done before that I think looked really good here. So no surprise, but yes, the animation was, again, fantastic. So let's dive right into these episodes. I'll start with episode 1, easily my favorite of the 3-pack that we got. We're following Omega through her everyday life. I think the direction, editing, and music does a lot of the atmospheric work here to make the passage of time feel interesting and engaging, even though this is a very monotonous life that she and Crosshair are living. They're going from cell to cell. She's just getting her blood taken every day. She's interacting with her sister, Emery, who doesn't show her any emotions, and it's just the same thing every day. There's this great shot pretty much every day or every scene in her room that starts on the faucet trickling water out. I was trying to kind of analyze this to a deeper level than just, emphasizing the emptiness of her space. And I kind of thought, oh, well, every time they show it, the water is dripping. You would think a facility like this wouldn't be having issues with the plumbing. So, it could symbolize that she's splashing her face to kind of keep herself focused. She's always using the sink to kind of wake herself up or make her stay focused that she has to get out of here. And that's why it's always dripping, because she has it on a lot and she's always looking out the window. That's just maybe a very deep dive cut into it, but I do think there is significance with it because they do show it in every scene. I think it's really great to see her, fashioning these dolls that she finds comfort in while she's in solitary confinement. It's very similar to the doll that she had when she was on board with the rest of the Bad Batch crew. We have to remember she is still a kid. She's younger than Ahsoka was at the beginning of Clone Wars. She's still a kid at heart, and this is just really cruel that she is being subjected to this type of life, especially since she's always been subjected to this kind of life. And the Bad Batch showed her that freedom of the galaxy and her time on Pabu and taking in the breeze and just being outside and not in a sanitized facility. I really connected with Omega in these first 3 episodes more than I probably ever have in the previous seasons of Bad Batch. She definitely had her moments, but I feel in these first 3 episodes, she felt much more like a round character and less of kind of that childlike perspective where it's like, we can do it, guys. Come on, let's do it. Let's save everyone. I feel here we see that she is more of a round character. She has these down moments. She tries to take charge of her life. She's confused. She's inquisitive. She's harsh when needed against the robot droid in the kennel with the dogs that are used to kind of protect the outside of Mount Tantis, and even with the dog itself, she's very, very much like a caregiver to the dog. And I'm not sure if I've heard this quote before, but my favorite quote from these first 3 episodes that actually comes from Omega is when Crosshair says to her, "You trust too easily," and she's like, "Maybe you don't trust enough." I thought that was a fantastic line and definitely shows the dichotomy of where Crosshair and Omega are at and why they're great foils for each other here. Getting back to Project Necromancer, we see that this laboratory is trying to test all of these different clones' blood samples to find one that matches to be able to, I guess, withstand or help create a clone or offspring that has a midichlorian count at the level of or past Palpatine's current count. We see Hemlock saying M count, so I know that's got to be midichlorian count, midichlorian, whatever. And we kind of all know that Omega is special. We know that she is a direct line back to the original DNA of Jango Fett, just like Boba Fett, Alpha, and Omega. So we know that it's more pure of a DNA form, and we'll probably learn more about this as we go on into the science, but we assume that since the DNA isn't stretched too much, it's able to withstand whatever they're trying to do with Palpatine's DNA and transferring his life force into a clone. So we know her blood is special. We know that's why the Empire was after her for the first 2 seasons, and now they finally have her. But her old mentor, Nala Se, has been covering for her. Every time they take a blood sample, she destroys the blood sample. And it seems like Nala Se has been like lobotomized. She is talking a lot slower and more robotic. I don't remember her speaking this neutered in the previous 2 seasons, so it feels like the Empire has done something to her. I wish Omega maybe acknowledged it. Maybe I'm just tripping and she's talking the same as she always has. I haven't rewatched season 1 or 2 in a minute, so maybe she's the same old Nala Se, but something seems different about her, and it would make sense that the Empire would do something to her to make her more subservient to them. We see that she still has this affinity for Omega, and is the reason she and Crosshair are able to escape in episode 3. I think Emery is a very interesting character moving forward. She's Omega's sister, essentially the same way clones are brothers to each other. She's also a clone to Omega, so she's Omega's sister. She's very dry, she's very direct, she doesn't show a lot of empathy to Omega. She does give her back her little doll that she created, so we know she does have somewhat of a soft spot for her, but again, she is like afraid to do what the Bad Batch did. She's afraid to do what Omega did and escape and live in the galaxy because there is safety in her life that she's living now. Same way with Crosshair. There was safety in him still being a soldier and not having to face the question of, well, if I'm not a soldier and I've only ever been a soldier, what am I supposed to do with my life? And I think she's kind of the foil to that for Omega. And so while she isn't a cruel person, she doesn't know what she would do with her life outside the Empire. So she just stays subservient and even tries to stop Omega and Crosshair from leaving. But we can see, even though she is very monotone, she is like, you can't survive out there. I'm trying to look out for you. But Omega survived before. And it's a nice little parallel to the allegory of Omega's little dog friend who she saves and tries to protect and eventually lets loose. And Hemlock's like, well, it's very cruel what you just did. It won't survive out there. It's wounded. What you've done is more cruel than what I would have done is just terminate it. And Omega, as the theme of the show of the Bad Batch kind of says, like, you don't know what can happen out there. You don't know that it won't survive. Just like me and the Bad Batch have survived since. Even though we were bruised, battered, and injured, we still made our way in the galaxy. And so the dog was a nice allegory to that. And we see the dog will probably be in future episodes because the dog's in too. The dog escapes. I kind of realize I've just been blending episode 1 and 3 together, so I'm just talking about these all as one episode, and I'll talk about episode 2 a little later. But I think Crosshair between episodes 1 and 3 is really good. Again, we're still seeing him struggle with this idea of what comes after being a soldier. We see he has developed this hand shaking, which is funny because he's Crosshair. He's supposed to be a sharpshooter. He's supposed to be the best shot. He's supposed to be the most steady-handed, and now he has this shake to him, which is likely from the trauma that he's now experienced. And I forget if he had that in previous season. I don't remember it, but it would make sense that it's a manifestation of his mental state, and his hand is shaking now, and maybe that'll come around. Maybe he'll miss an important shot later. Who knows? But it's just more of the same Crosshair, but that's been his role in the show, and that's made the show really interesting because we have that perspective. I am a bit surprised that Omega and Crosshair have escaped already. I didn't expect them to get out within the first 3 episodes. I thought they would be on Mount Tantis a bit longer, but I do understand that, maybe that would get drawn out unless there was some more freedom to do more stories within Mount Tantis, but it seemed like a very monotonous setting, so they kind of had to break the mold there. But, I kind of thought there would be more of a separation between Omega and the Bad Batch for a bit longer, kind of like Grogu and Mando in season 2 and 3. But I do think, there will be some time before they get back together, the whole crew back together. And that'll be a nice reunion with Crosshair and the crew. I think the last thing I'll touch on that will very nicely transition me into episode 2 is the character of Hemlock and him being this very buttoned up mad scientist. I think a lot of the times we think of mad scientists as these maniacal, crazy laugh, crazy glasses, but he's very cool, calm, and collected. And we see that he's done horrific experimentation. We saw the Zillo Beast in last season, but here we see that the kind of the grounds around Mount Tantis are kind of his like training grounds for these mutated creatures that he's creating, and whether they're helping him do his research for Palpatine or they're simply just his pet projects that eventually will be used by Palpatine. We see Palpatine say in the episode, like, these experiments that you're doing on the creatures is also useful to the Empire, but the most important thing is the cloning process. So we know this is a sick guy, this Hemlock. And I like how it's just kind of been an undertone. We see a creature outside that the dogs fight. We see them talk a lot about, if that ship crashed, they're not surviving out there. Nothing can survive out there. So we don't know what other horrors are outside beyond the perimeter, other creatures that maybe failed and were too crazy to keep in the facility. I think it's all just very cool for his character. I am curious why they think dogs would be a useful way to guard the perimeter of Mount Tantis, because you're creating a hole into Mount Tantis by having their cages. I know there's ray shielding in there, but it is kind of interesting that they went with that. It almost makes it seem like they created it just for Omega and Crosshair to have a easier way to get out of Mount Tantis instead of just doing an Obi-Wan and just walking out onto the shuttle bay and just taking a shuttle and leaving. But maybe there will be more explanation as to, why they're using animals to patrol the perimeter, not just having soldiers or whatever. But I think it all just contributes to his mad science experiments on animals and creating these different weapons for the Empire. And this kind of leads me into episode 2 with Crosshair, with Wrecker and Hunter looking for clues to find out where Hemlock took Omega. And that leads them to this old research facility that was Hemlock's at one point, but they destroyed it. And they encounter 3 clone cadets, basically child versions of the clones that survived or escaped the facility. And I think this is a very interesting plot point that they bring up here, that, what happens to these kids? I don't think they dive into it as much as I hoped they would to really analyze the mind state of clone cadets at this point. We've seen the grown versions of clones and how they deal with it, but what do these clone cadets do? But it is an interesting concept, and we see that they know about this creature that Hemlock had created, and this creature very much reminds me of Gravemind from Halo, the Flood hive mind, because, we have these like tentacles and there's these little versions of him running around with the face sucker teeth. And it's a cool monster design. It's different, but it is a monster of the week. But like I said, it does contribute to Hemlock's character and the monstrosities that he has created for the Empire. It does remind me the actual creature. Of course, the easy thing is to say it looks like a Sarlacc pit, but it's more resemblant of the Umbara arc when there are those flowers that, you step on their vine, they catch you and they throw you in the mouth. It reminded me more of that, or like a hybrid of the two. That's really inside baseball there, but I kind of had to talk about that. So yeah, this is a pretty straightforward episode. What really stuck out for me was the animation here. I loved when they had the shot of them landing on the forest planet. It's a really beautiful like landscape with the fog coming off the trees. It almost looks like painted, and when the ship goes to land, it kind of seeps into the background and looks like all of it's painted. I thought that was really beautiful. I think the opening shot of this this crime syndicate castle, really cool. I thought the castle was amazing, and it always makes me excited. Like, look at all of this stuff that we could explore in Star Wars, but we just end up like, doing the usual with the same like 25 characters. But this got me excited for like Star Wars Outlaws. Like, ooh, I want to go to like this type of castle for a crime syndicate. Like, how cool would it be to do this? So there were definitely some like high points in this Monster of the Week episode. I wish, this episode didn't need to rely on that. I wish there was just more tension between, just Crosshair. I keep saying Crosshair. More tension between like Hunter and Wrecker about, how are we going to find Omega? Maybe some frustration and tension between them. Having deeper conversations with the clone cadets about what they want to do instead of just like the one line at the end. I think all of this could have been explored more. I think the clone cadets, there's like this little moment where they're like, oh, we'll just take the ship and leave. And you're like, wow, oh, maybe they'll double cross them. But that really never comes into play. They pretty much just go right to them and save them. So, they tried to inject some artificial tension there, but it just didn't feel like that was ever going to happen. So while I'm not like thrilled about more Monster of the Week episodes, I think this is like okay. Like, this is fine. Like, this is okay to do this type of episode. Again, I hope they don't do any more of these for the rest of the season, but I don't think that's possible. I think maybe we'll get one or two more. But if they're going to be like this, okay, fine. Ultimately, why I think they have to do it is because Hunter and Wrecker are such one-note characters that it's difficult to build an entire episode just about them, so they have to inject tension and excitement in other ways because the dialogue between Wrecker and Hunter is always going to be very basic. I wish they would flesh out the characters more, but by the time now we're in the final season, I think they've kind of just said, hey, we understand what we got in these characters. Maybe they'll have some deeper moments later, but in episode to episode, we just kind of have to find other ways to create conflict and tension instead of using these two characters in a less action-based way. But I think that covers pretty much everything I wanted to talk about. Omega, Crosshair, and the dog have escaped Mount Tantis. Hemlock can't destroy them because we see that Omega's blood is a match. It is able to handle the M count that they need for Palpatine. What that means going forward within Mount Tantis, who knows? How much more do they need of Omega's blood? Do they need Omega herself, like her entire body, like some really creepy, like mind swapping for Palpatine? Do they need to just like hold her in a cage until Palpatine dies and then they'll use her and resurrect him through her? Like, is that what they want to do? I have no idea. Some Frankenstein stuff. But we'll see what happens next week. We'll see if they get back together with the crew. We know that they're going to be heading towards the sector where Omega and Crosshair are. We know Asajj Ventress is somehow going to be caught up in all of this. They did say that the story would align with what happens in Dark Disciple, the book, one of my favorite Star Wars books. So if that's the case, it has to be a flashback of some sort to the Clone Wars, just after Ventress left Count Dooku and became a bounty hunter and got the yellow lightsaber. I'm curious how they're going to do that. But yeah, I do think it's crazy that they are going to have 16 episodes for this season. I did feel like the story would be shorter than 16, but I am excited to see where they go with this. I've seen some reviews for the first 8 episodes. Some people were given codes to watch the first 8 episodes really early, and a lot of people have said that this is, definitely the strongest season so far. Darker tone, really fantastic episodes, really emotional. So I'm very much looking forward to it. I think, we have this 3-pack now. We have a 2-pack, I think, for the mid-season finale. And then I think the finale is 1 or 2 episodes as well, maybe like an hour long. So 16 episodes. It should end right around May the 4th, which is really cool. They definitely totally planned it that way, right? So yeah, I'm very excited to be back, excited to do these weekly episodes for the Bad Batch for you guys. In seasons past, I didn't cover every episode because sometimes they were stinkers, but I think we're going to be in a good place this season. So I'm anticipating that I'll be doing this every week. But again, thank you guys so much for listening. Hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please leave a rating on whatever streaming service you're listening on. Follow me on Instagram at @star_wars_Mark of Balance. Really appreciate all the support. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell anyone that likes Star Wars that you know. You guys rock. As always, stay safe, stay healthy, and may the Force be with you. Peace.